First of all, I want to start from the very beginning, from a short description. What will be happening today? What will I show? Some words about our infrastructure and some words about the attack flow. Okay, so here is the first slide we've got here. Short description about our infrastructure. So there is a local network in which we've got all of our assets, all of our infrastructure elements, and which will take part in our response actions. So we've got a local network with the hacker endpoint host. Let's assume that this attacker was able to intrude this network and to connect to this network with his device. For example, this device is something like Raspberry. Yes, and he was able to connect to the local network. What else? We've got Linux machine with the vulnerable Apache service, web server, that is serving beyond this host. What else? We've got a domain endpoint, Alice host. Okay, this host is a part of the domain, and Alice is count name, which is the part of the domain as well. We've got a checkpoint here, which stands between the internal network and the external network. We've got a Kaspersky secure mail gateway, which stands mail protection solution, and we've got Kaspersky XDR. So that's our network. So what else? We've got installed EDR agent, and we collect some system logs from Linux machine. We collect these logs to our XDR solution. We've got EDR agent, standalone agent on Alice host in the domain. So telemetry from this agent is also collected to our XDR solution. And moreover, we collect some Windows log from this endpoint. So we've got checkpoint. We also collect information from this one. Yes, we've got domain controller from where we collect Windows logs. And we've got Kaspersky Secure Mail Gateway, which also sends us useful information and telemetry to our XDR platform. So the next slides are about our attack flow. I will describe shortly about what is going on here. So the attacker tries to discover some useful information from the local network. Attacker discovers vulnerable Linux server, and he exploits the vulnerability at first. So he makes initial exploitation. He gets reverse shell with the help of this vulnerability. And what he needs following is to gain its privilege. So he tries to find some useful information for him on this host. So he tries to make some discovery. And finally, he finds some misconfiguration, finds a security hole in a cron tab task. So this cron tab task runs this script that is placed in the root, and this script is misconfigured by its privileges. So attacker determines that everyone on this machine has an ability, has permission to write or to read anything from this file. So he then continues to exploit this misconfiguration on this endpoint. He writes a command to this script which allows him to elevate his privileges to root. So he adds some string which adds daemon user to sudoers file, which will allow him to elevate his privileges with the sudo command without a password, because he is edited to sudoers file. So he gets the root access, and after that he is able to make some more detailed discovery. And during this discovery, he tries to find some commands that has been executed on this endpoint. And finally, he finds that Alice has been trying to authenticate in Kerberos from this endpoint. Then he finds Kerberos configuration on this endpoint, so he can find domain controller coordinates, okay? And then he finds some artifacts from logs from where he can identify that Alice has been trying to connect to current machine from her own machine that is managed by Windows. Okay, so we've got three useful points here from attacker is understanding that Alice is a domain user account. He knows that where is it domain located, so he knows its coordinates, and he knows where is Alice coming from. He knows the IP address from where Alice has been trying to get access to this Linux server. So then he realizes that he wants to make some lateral movement, so he can use this gathered data to perform some brute force attack So he initiates a brute force attack to that machine from where Alice has been trying to get access to this Linux machine. But this brute force is unsuccessful. And after that, he decides to send the backdoor via email. And he assumes that Alice will open this email and run the attachment that will bring a backdoor connection to the hacker. So then he receives this backdoor and is able to do whatever he wants on Alice machine, which is a part of the domain. Okay, as he receives reverse shell, attacker starts to gather some useful information. So he tries to make some discovery, and the only purpose here is to get some domain credentials. By domain credentials, I mean some hashes, some passwords, and he realizes that in order to get these credentials, he needs to dump LSS process from this machine, and he is unable to do that because his privileges is not enough to do that. So he decides to elevate his privileges to system, and to do that, he needs to bypass user account control. So he finally does this bypass, and he successfully get an access to LSS, and he is able to dump it. And after dumping this LSS, he can parse this dump. He can get anti-hash of Alice user account, and with the help of this domain credential, he is able to enumerate SPN users in the domain to perform Kerberostian attack in order to make some following lateral movement actions. So that's the scenario. Here we go to our XDR platform. We are now in the alerts. We do not have an incident right now because we are SOC analyst. And what we see here is only alerts. And we can see that here is a bunch of new alerts. Yes, there are a lot of them. And now we are going to deep dive in these alerts and to get an understanding of what was happening in the infrastructure during the attack. First of all, we can see first two alerts that were triggered at the very beginning. We go to the alert and see what's inside it. We are in the alert right now, so we can see short descriptive information, summary about timestamps when this alert happened. We can see some information about severity. We can see correlation rules that has been triggered by the events. We can see that here is MITRE mapping, so we can see tactics and techniques. We can see details, so here are some base events that have been correlated. We'll look deeper at this moment later. So we've got some observables and some assets. And what else? We've got assets. Assets is a part of our infrastructure that took part in our alert. For example, in this asset is Web Application Apache endpoint. So we can see properties of this endpoint. So we can see useful information. Okay. So first of all, let's take a look at base event, and we're trying to understand what was happening. As you can see now, here is a base event that Apache server, I mean Linux server, has sent. And this event is about triggering the Apache vulnerability. We can see here the request context, which leads us to run some BNSH from the attacker. What else we can see here is the source address is the source of the attack. This is IP address from where we've received this request. So, and we want to make more details about this attack and about what was happening around this alert. So we create an incident. We understand that this alert is quite critical because this is about vulnerability exploitation. Okay, let's create some incident. We can assign the analyst, which will make an investigation. In my case, I choose admin. So we can set the priority. For example, we choose critical because our alert is quite critical. And we can write some description. Press OK. Here we've got incident is something like the aggregating point of alerts that are added to this incident. So here you can see the only one alert that has been added here. Yes, and we start to investigate with the help of our graph. So graph is the useful mechanism that allows you not to flow in the threat hunting, in the search queries. It's a smart thing that will save your time. So we've got alert on this graph. We can see observables, devices here. We're interested in devices. We can find some observables. So device is Web Apache. What else? We can see that here is IP address, and we've got different IP address. We've already seen that this address is address of this endpoint. So these assets are about just one host. So what else we want to see is what else happened to this endpoint after this exploitation. We want to see some similar alerts. So we go to find some similar alerts and try to see what was happening. Here we've got some alerts that are also associated with this endpoint, and we've got here some alerts. These alerts we have already seen. It's not interesting for us because this alert is that one. We can see another one, script dropped elf to TMP directory. So we choose this item. We want to show it in the graph. And we can see that this alert is also connected with these two endpoints. As I've already mentioned, these two of these endpoints are associated with our Linux host. And let's see what is this alert about. We can see that here is some MITRE tactic and MITRE technique. So it's about the execution and common scripting interpreter. So we look at the base event and we can see that this event is from our EDR standalone. This is telemetry, is about file change, that some file has changed on the TMP directory, and this file was created. And this file is ELF. So it's some binary that was dropped by BNSH to temporary directory, and this can look suspicious. What else we can see here is hash of this file, which could be actionable a little bit later. So what else we can see here? That sudoers configuration triggered. We also add this alert to the graph. We can see that these points are also associated with these endpoints. Let's take a look what's inside it. So here we can see as well MITRE tactic and technique. So it's different from previous alert. And what we can see here is that someone has modified sudoers file in etc directory. So that can be suspicious, especially on the working service, because it's not really good activity that could be happened in the Linux host. Yes, of course, this could be happened as a result of administration actions, but we've got a previous context that vulnerability has been exploited on this endpoint, that some ELF file has been dropped to TMP directory, and we can assume that this activity is also stands to be malware or suspicious activity. So let's take a look at some observables that are present here. Here is a file hash. Information about this file hash we can request it from Kaspersky threat lookup from our threat intelligence portal. So we can request status, and we can see that this file is green, just because we have already seen that this MD5 is part of hash of BNSH process. It's not bad. So okay, let's take a look what we've got in another alert. We've got different alerts accessing system configuration from shell. Okay, we can show it on the graph as well. There are two events in this alert. We can see that it's medium severity, and in the base event we can see that someone has called cat etc passvd, what is suspicious as well, especially having previous context about vulnerability exploitation. So it's interesting for us as well. We can see that here is a different hash. We also can request some information about Kaspersky threat intelligence. Also, we can see that this hash is green because it's a hash of cat binary, which we have already seen in the event. There are 4 alerts that are associated with our endpoint, and all of these alerts are quite suspicious. And for now, we can conclude that something wrong is going here. What else we can see here is a low priority, low severity alert, silent user discovery. Let's place it to the graph. Let's see what's inside it. Here we've got another alert. We can see that it has a low severity. It has a technique or system owner user discovery. Let's see what is in our alert. Is my execution on the Linux endpoint, which is a part of our telemetry of our standalone agent. And to understand that my is not really a good point to detect it for, but again, having a previous context, this can be useful for us. So we can understand that after exploitation of vulnerability, after dropping some ELF files, after modifying sudoers file, whomi is executed and it can be dangerous. So it's also useful for us. We also could show MD5 of whomi, but for now it's useless. We understand that whomi will be green here. Okay, what else? Accessing system configuration from Linux shell. Oh, we can see that we've got one more connection with this file. We remember that this hash is a hash of cat file. Let's see what's going on here. So, and we can see that cat has called etc passvd. Okay, some additional information that we've got here. Okay, and CVE exploitation that we have already seen. So what we've got here, yes, we've got here some alerts that are associated with the only one endpoint, okay? And what we want to do here is to get some more briefly information about what was happening. So we go to threat hunting and we'll try to find some timeline, what was happening during this attack. Try to find some events that were around this attack. We could see that here is ELF dropped to the TMP directory, and we assume that this binary has executed all of this stuff that we have seen. We can see that file name here is this one, okay, and we can put over from these events and to find some executions from this ELF file. That's what we're gonna do from threat hunting. We want to find all processes that have been run from this binary and all child of this process and all child of that process and all child of that process. We know the timeline, we know from where this attack began, and we have to filter according to this. So we can apply run query. Here we can see some events, but let's take a look at fields, what we have here. Do not need, we've got source process. So here we can see the threat hunting, as I have already mentioned, threat hunting request, where we are trying to get all childs that were executed from this binary from TMP directory. And what we can see here, that binsh ran this binary, and after that, this binary executes bin dash, and this bin dash is gonna be our source process for all following actions. So what we can see here, the attacker has executed whomi, attacker has executed hostname, ifconfig, okay, he's been trying to execute cat etc crontab, as I have already mentioned at the very beginning. He was trying to find some misconfigurations and he found it in a crontab. So he found a script in the cron tab that executes every minute, and then attacker checks this script for its privileges. So he tries to get information from this script, what's inside it. After that, he forms modifying the script. He writes this string, this instruction to the script, which means that he adds daemon user to use sudo without a password. Okay. So after that script, it's nothing happening here. After that, he gets elevated privileges. So he executes whomi, he uses shadow, he reads shadow, he finds Kerberos configuration, he reads some logs, and in these logs, he's trying to find accepted string, which means that he's trying to find some SSH connections which are coming from anywhere. So before that, he elevated his privileges with the sudo. So here it's shadow, and that's all. Now we can understand what was happening in this endpoint. And for now, we can understand that there are some actions are needed here. Let's go to our alert list. We'll add all of these alerts to our incident. So we can see the alert list. We have already seen it. And what we want to do here is to add these alerts to our incident, as we understand that these alerts are associated with our incident. So here we can see affected assets. Here is web application Apache, and we have seen all of these alerts coming from Apache web server. And what we do is we add these alerts to our incident. Okay, so we've got an incident, enriched incident with all of our alerts. We've got different MITRE techniques, different MITRE tactics, different severity alerts. But we've mentioned that this incident is quite critical. We've got all alerts on board here. We've got all observables here. Some of these observables are requested from Threat Intelligence Portal, and we can see that these files are, and we've got the only one asset. So what we can do here from response perspective of view, we can choose this asset, and there are some response rules. So these are the actions that could be executed according to this endpoint. And as we can hear, it's more likely to disable this endpoint, so to isolate this endpoint in the network. So once we press this button, we send the command to our XDR that will isolate this endpoint, and it will be impossible to interact with it. Let's go to the graph again and continue our investigation. So what we've done here is investigation coming from this endpoint, but we've got a real attack source, this endpoint. This is attacker's Raspberry. And what we want is to find similar alerts that come from the attacker's host. Maybe there is something interesting could be found here. So we also press and try to find similar alerts. So we've got some new alerts that are not parts of our incident right now, okay? And what we can see, the first is a brute force attempt, okay? So we want to show this on the graph, and let's see what's happening during the brute force. So we've got this alert, and we can see that there are 40 events part of this alert. So let's deep dive into this alert and see what's happening there. Okay, so brute force attempt, MITRE tactic is credential access, MITRE tactic credential access, MITRE technique is brute force. Here are many events. Let's take a look at some. Okay, so we open this event, and what we can see here, Windows security auditing log is the source of this event. Okay, we can see that this endpoint is a source of this event, and this event is about account failed to log on. Okay, we can see that the source of this failure log on is Kali Linux host, which is Raspberry, attacker's Raspberry. This brute force was performed with the Alice account and with the domain account. So Alice is a part of the XDR lab domain, and attacker has been trying to brute force with this account, which we'll see later. And the reason of failure is wrong password. So he tried to perform some different passwords to get access to Alice workstation. So we can see different alerts. We managed to see that Alice is a user as well, and wrong password as well. So we can see that all of these alerts, all of these events are about fails, and here is no successes. So we assume that the attacker was failed at a brute force attack. All we can see here is also the Alice endpoint. Okay, it's a different endpoint. Previously we could see Linux host. We also could perform transactions here to isolate this endpoint, because we understand that someone is trying to get access to it, isolate this host. And what else? Here is Alice user account, which is the account with which attacker is trying to get an access. So we also can go to the properties and make response actions in the domain. So we can lock the account. So no one will be able to use this account to do whatever. But here are some different response actions as well. We can add a user to a security group, delete it from, can reset the password. So we can see some more alerts. So we've already seen a brute force attempt. So let's take a look at this one, suspicious web protocol usage. Want to show it on the graph. Okay, and let's see the device itself. So we can see that brute force attack was initiated from attacker's endpoint, attacker's IP address, which is at the top from this one. He's been trying to brute force Alice and trying to get access to IT department host, which is Alice host. Suspicious web protocol usage alert, can view details. And what we'll see here, we've got many alerts from here, many events from here, which says that that there are some network connections from Alice host to IP address of the attacker to this port with the help of Alice user account. And this network connection was performed with the help of this file. So we do not know the nature of this file. We do not know from where it came from, but all we know here that this is not good connection. So it's suspicious connections from Alice host to another host, to attacker's host. So what we can see here, we want to make sure that connections were initiated only to attacker's host, but we can see that here is one more IP address that is dangerous according to data from our Kaspersky threat intelligence platform. So, and we can request the details of this IP address, and we can see that this IP address took part at APT attack. According to this point where we're looking at, our endpoint event was correlated with this feed collection that is loaded to our XDR. Now that this IP address is bad, and if connection is going to this IP address, so this connection is bad. But this data is from our endpoint, but there is another option. When we use feed collections, we can correlate it not only with endpoint telemetry, we can correlate it with different data sources. What I mean, for example, we've got these alerts, these 4 alerts, and we can see that here are some checkpoint events, which says that someone has created a network connection to this IP address. So it's an alert as well. We know that this IP address is bad. We've got many different data sources, standalone agent, checkpoint, and any different. So, and we can conclude that this connection was successfully performed and it's gone through checkpoint firewall. So we've seen an incident that someone has initiated network connection to bad IP address. We can see that someone has started newx.exe file to external IP address. We can see here that this file took part in this attack. And what we want to understand is from where this file appeared in this endpoint, in the Alice endpoint. And for now, we go to our alert list and try to see which alerts do we have. Suspicious web protocol usage was the part of this incident, as well as brute force attempt. We link these alerts to our existing incident. We could see that these alerts came from attacker's endpoint. So, and what we want to identify is the source of this file. We can see here one more alert. So network connection to malware IP from email attached file. We go to this alert and see what's happening there. So we can see that here is 2 events from different data sources. First event came from our mail security solution, which says that such file, new.exe, with the such file hash came from email address to Alice mail address. And after that, this file has initiated a network connection to external IP address. Here is a connection that new.exe connected to bad IP address. So, and for now, we can understand that attacker has sent email attachment, which Alice successfully run on her machine, and he was able to get a shell. So what we do following, we go to our incident, go to the graph. We could see suspicious web protocol usage. We could see different IP addresses there. So we could see that this IP address is red, so it has got bad reputation. And we want to find similar alerts that are associated with this IP address as well. So here we can see these alerts. So we have already looked at these alerts, and we know that they came from our checkpoint solution. We place it to the graph. And also we've seen the alert, which says that bad connection was initiated from the file that was received via email. So what we can do from here, we can go to the alert from checkpoint. We have already seen that Alice host has connected to bad IP address. What we can do from here is to block this IP address on a checkpoint. So here is a playbook. We can run a playbook and block it here. IP address is blocked. What are the playbooks? They are custom scripts that could be written by anyone So, and can be executed from any alert or even from incident. And these scripts could be very, very different. So it can contain many different parts with many different response actions on different systems, just being in just one playbook. Playbook looks like a script. So you just write a script, or we write a script according to our third-party support, and you can use it. So here is playbook that was run to checkpoint. So IP address is plugged out on a checkpoint firewall. And what else we can do here is go to our alert with the email event, and we are able to block sender email address in order to prevent from sending any messages from his address. From these alerts, we can block sender email through our mail protection solution. It's blocked. So as I have already mentioned, these playbooks are customizable, so you can create it by yourself. There are some prepared ones that are integrated into third-party solutions. So now we can understand that we've got some file, yes, and we want to fulfill left alerts and to add it to our incident. So we know that these connections are associated with that attack and this one as well. Some alerts are left. We can see that these alerts are also came from Alice host. We can take a brief look at all of these alerts, trying to understand what was happening in these alerts. Here we can see that discovery tactic was used. Whoami command was executed. So we assume that attacker has been trying to make some discovery actions on the endpoint. He also attempted to escalate his privileges with the help of such technique via named pipes. We can see here that I want to mention some previous steps we have performed in our investigation. So where we are at investigation of what was happening on Alice host. Okay, so we previously were able to identify the attack flow that have been performed on Linux host. We were able to detect some attackers' actions. We had some alerts. We have created the incident. We were able to use MITRE attack matrix to determine what was happening on this host. And we're going to continue the same steps with the Windows host. Let's see what was happening in our incident previously. So we've got the incident, and we determined that some steps were performed on the Linux host, Apache exploitation, some elf trap to the TMP directory, some discovery steps. After that, we realized that attacker has performed a brute force attack from his host to new host to Alice Windows host with the help of collected artifacts. We could see that some connection has been detected between Alice host and the attacker host according to this alert. We were able to see some useful information about connection to external IP address with the help of checkpoint logs. We were able to see how malicious file was executed on the Alice host and how she received this file. We could conclude that this file was received via email and consequently was executed by Alice. We could perform some response actions. By response actions, I mean we were able to isolate Linux host to block consequent attack spreading. We were able to lock out Alice user account in the domain controller in the domain. We were able to block external IP address in the checkpoint with the help of flexible playbook technology that we've got in our XDR. And we were able to block email sender address, our Kaspersky secure mail gateway, with the help of playbook as well. So one thing I want to mention is that there is no reason to think that that we can interact only with our own Kaspersky products. Playbooks are flexible, and you are able to write different scripts, different instructions to interact with any product of any vendor that we've shown on a checkpoint example. So you are able to do it with any product. We'll continue our investigation. Like let's look at the graph again. At the very top of the graph, we can see our Linux response and investigation process that we've performed. At the bottom of the graph, we can see all alerts, all observables that are associated with Windows host, Alice host. And also we could see that some bad IP was connected. There was a connection from Alice host to bad IP through checkpoint. Yes, and we were able to block it. Here you can see that this IP address is related to be red. It's red because we've got threat intelligence portal integration with an XDR, okay, and we can grab some useful information about what Kaspersky knows about such IP address. So Kaspersky Threat Intelligence Portal is a portal in which we collect all of our expertise. We collect all of this data from the internet, from our researches, from malware, viruses that we can collect from our users, from the internet. So, and there are many indicators of compromise we've got in Threat Intelligence Portal, and we do know that some of them are bad and are related to be the part of APT threat attacks. We continue our investigation. We've got some more alerts. Let's look at them. Here we can see that previously we could determine that some network connection was executed from the Alice host, and in this alert we were able to see the cross-correlation rule between two different data sources. One source is our endpoint, and the second source is our email security solution. And we can see the event here with the source username. We've blocked this email on a previous demo, okay? And the second event that is related to be a network connection that Alice has initiated with the help of this process, new x.exe, okay? And this process has this hash. So we assume that this hash, this file, is the source of the following actions were done by attacker and the reason why following alerts were created. Then we will open each alert one by one, and let's take a look what was happening there. Okay, so this alert is about the discovery. We can see raw events here, and these events are about the executing of whoami process. We can see that whoami was executed with these arguments, and it looks like real discovery. Let's take a look at the following alerts. So here are some alerts that is related to be an attempt to escalate privileges with the help of named pipes on the operating system. And as well, we can see that services.exe has performed some command trying to write some data to named pipe, okay? And this action is related to be a privilege escalation, okay? We will describe it later. I'm trying to look at our graph. So also we can see post-exploitation tools used. Take a look at this alert. This alert is about threat detection by our endpoint protection mechanisms, but I want to mention that here in this lab, our endpoint protection works with detection only mode. So here we can see that hashes are 0 just because this detection happened to content of memory, yes, and we can see the verdict. So it seems that attacker used some known tools, some tools that are known by our products, and these tools were not detected when it was on the file system because these tools could be obfuscated. There could be some bypass algorithms to prevent detecting by our static mechanisms. So, and this is our compensation measure where we try to scan local memory and try to detect something exists in the memory. As well, we can see here MITRE tactic and technique is used, and assets and observables are the same here as in previous alerts. So this alert is also related to our host, Alice host. What we can see next is two similar alerts, but these alerts are triggered because of different reasons. First alert we can see LSS access attempt. What it is about? That is about the action that were performed by procdemp64.exe that tried to get an access to the LSS process. So we can see that severity of these alerts is medium. It's medium because it's normal that some applications in Windows are written in this manner when they try to get full access to all processes that are running that are running on the operating system. So someone is trying to get an access, and we can see that process that has been trying to get this access is procdemp with following parameters, yes, following arguments, and the main argument here is that attacker has been trying to dump lss.exe, so it's his target, and he tried to place this dump to the file system, as we assume that he wants to download this dump, to parse it, and to get some useful information from it, and to use it for his purposes. And also we've got the second alert that says that procdump64.exe is really suspicious and it has high severity. Same arguments here. There are two alerts on the same action, but with different reasons. First alert was performed just because someone has been trying to get access to lss.exe. The second one is about executing procdump64.exe. Okay, what we've got next, here is some service has been created on the endpoint, which is normal in normal infrastructure, but having previous context, we can assume that this service could be the part of the attack. Let's take a look at this event. Yes, and we can see that this event is related to be the reason of creating the service on the operating system with following command. We have already seen this alert to this command for privilege escalation, but this is one more alert related to say that we've got one more evidence, one more artifact that says that the service was created on this endpoint. And we've got the last alert, which is named that's SPN accounts enumerating performed, what it means. So let's take a look at this event. And we can see that this event goes from domain controller. So for us, it's a third-party source, third-party log from Windows Security Auditing, and its ID 4769. It's about requesting the Kerberos tickets, but as we can see in the content of this event, we can see that service tickets are requested here. Yes, and service tickets with such ticket options. What leads us to think that service accounts are requested by the same IP with the help of same domain account, and it's about a Kerberosian attack. Okay, so we can see that someone with Alice from attacker IP address is trying to enumerate SPNs, service principal names of services in the domain. Okay, and this action is related to be the part of Kerberosian attack. So the attacker gets service tickets, and he could decrypt it on his side to use these credentials for further actions with this domain data. What else we can see here is new assets that we've got. So here are many service accounts. So these service accounts were requested by our users. It means that these accounts could be compromised. So what we can do here is the same as with Alice. So we can go to priorities and lock out this account in the domain. So the attacker will not be able to use his credentials to perform the lateral movement. Okay, we can lock it out, and after this, all of his tickets would be expired, and it will not be possible to do something with these credentials. Let's make some conclusions here. We've got compromised Windows host, which is managed by Alice. Alice has executed some file that been trying to connect to our attacker machine as well as to external IP address that is related to be bad, according to our expertise. And after this execution, some bad actions happened to this host. So the discovery was performed on this machine. Then something was like privilege escalation on this machine. After that, we could see that post-exploitation tools were detected on this machine. LSAS was accessed and successfully dumped. After that, we could see that SPN enumeration was performed, which is a part of Kerberos-Tin attack. So we can assume that Alice's account was compromised, her computer, her workstation was compromised as well, and many service principal names tickets were compromised also. What we can do here, we assume that all of these actions are related to the same attack that we could see previously, because we've got a connection between Alice host and attacker host, and we could see that this attacker performed some bad actions on Linux machine, and we add all of these alerts to our incident. Okay, so we've collected full incident. We do not have any others alerts. We could see all rules that were triggered in our incident. We've got all tactics. We've got all techniques that were used during the attack. We've got all alerts. We can see full list of our observables, and we can see the full list of our assets. Also, we can conclude that many different data sources were used here, so third-party data sources. Not only our standalone agent was used here, not only our EDR solution. So first of all, I want to mention that the very first event here is not the result of our telemetry, is the result of collecting Linux Apache logs, access logs, correlating data from this data source. We could see the connection to malware IP, which comes from Checkpoint solution. So we could collect this third-party data source and could correlate it with our feeds, our feed collections. We were able to see cross-correlation rule that correlates data between two different data sources, from mail gateway and from our standalone agent. Moreover, I want to mention that it's possible to use more smart cross-correlation rules. For example, in this rule, we could use this data source, I mean Checkpoint. So it could be the third event that would take part in this alert. After that, we could see that this event, SPN account enumeration performed, is also third-party data source because there is no our solution installed on the domain controller. And what we do is we just collect default information from Windows server and correlate it with our rules. And what else? We could perform some third-party response actions, not only our own actions with our EDR solution. What I mean is blocking IP address on the checkpoint and then blocking the sender email address on the secure gateway, mail gateway. Also, we could lock out some domain accounts in the domain, and all of this leads us to feel better during the investigation. So all of these processes are automated, and it's very flexible and can be used in very different scenarios. Also, you could create your own correlation rules. You could create your own response actions. You could create your playbooks, and these playbooks could be very heavy. They can contain of many parts. For example, there could be a sequence of different actions. For example, block the IP and lock out the account and isolate the host. So all of this could be in the one playbook, and you do not have to choose many of them. So what we want to do now is to go deeper to the Windows attack. So we go to the graph, make some actions with it. We want to find more alerts that were executed that happened to our Alice machine. We could see silent discovery. We can see named pipe impersonation, LSAS access, credential dumping, and post-exploitation tools. We can show it in the graph. But instead of trying to find some observables from these alerts, we go to threat hunting and we'll try to understand what was executed after new x.exe starting. So what we want now is to find out new x.exe file hash. We have already seen it in different alerts, and we can create a search to identify what was happening there, choose the time when the attack started. Then we try to find what was the consequence of executing of this file. And we want to find out what was happening on the Alice machine. That's her FQDN. Then we have to execute it and choose different fields for understanding. I've got saved field preset. Yes, this one. So what we can see here is that, first of all, this process new x.exe was executed by explorer.exe, what means that Alice has just tapped to this file and executed it from the desktop. And what else? We can see some network connections going from here to our bad IP address. For now, here is no checkpoint events just because I've included only endpoint telemetry. Yes, we can see some network connections. And here we can see that file newx.exe has been trying to execute who am I to get understanding which privileges does it have. So this was executed after network connection to our attacker IP address, and we can conclude that these actions are executed by attacker after backdoor was established. So after that, we can see that some registry operations were performed here. We can try to find some information in these events. Yes, we can see that this registry key, this one, was modified. The file have created this value name, and filled this value with this data. What does it mean? This key executes every time when PowerShell starts. So after PowerShell starts, this key is triggered and this command is executed. I will not show the decompiling process, decompiling and decoding process from here, but let's assume that we have done it and we can understand that this is the second backdoor. This is the backdoor that goes to our attacker IP address and creates the shell. But what is the reason why does attacker have to create the second shell if he has already one? As we can see before, he was able to execute cmd.exe, who am I, etc. So, and at the following events, we can see the answer. The answer is he was trying to elevate his privileges. So he then executed a FOTHelper.exe. That's a privilege escalation technique which will execute a PowerShell without user account control, which leads attacker to execute some more actions, some more commands with more privileges. And what we need here is to find out what was executed after FOTHelper.exe ran here. Now we create the second request, and we're trying to find processes that were ran with the help of FOTHelper.exe. So as you can see, here is a request source process name like FOTHelper. What we've got here is a FOTHelper execution process, but after that, we can see that PowerShell executes with the arguments in IX, and it consumes the registry key that we just have seen before, this key was created by previous process. What else we could do now is try to find out what was executed after this PowerShell session was created. We can get all of these process IDs and to find out what was executed from these IDs. I've got prepared request as well. We got all of these process IDs. All we do now is trying to find out what was executed by these processes. We execute query, and here we can see that FOTHelper is a part of these process IDs as well. We could see the PowerShell that we have already seen here. And the main thing we can see here is execution of procdump64.exe. Okay, and that's the final step. So nothing has been executed anymore. And here we've got the chain, the attack chain, the full understanding of what was happening. And we can say that the attacker sent email to Alice. Alice has executed the attachment from this email. After that, this file that was executed has been trying to connect to attacker's host, has created a reverse shell, and also initiated a connection to external IP address. So after that, attacker received a reverse shell. He understood he's executed who am I, and he could understand that it was impossible to make some actions because he doesn't have enough privileges. After that, he tried to bypass UAG and elevate its privileges. So he successfully did it, and as a result, he has performed procdump 64.exe, which dumps the LSS memory to the file system. After that, attacker was able to download this dump and was able to parse it to get the hashes of Alice user account and to perform a Kirby roasting, the part of Kirby roasting as an enumeration with the help of this user account. The investigation is finished. We've got full understanding of what was happening. We have performed different response actions. We've done some threat hunting to get more understanding, and we can close this incident according to our process. Okay, we can close it. We can say that it's true positive, and we can save it. So our investigation is done. What else I wanted to mention is to show what are our playbooks. So we've got two loaded playbooks here. We could go to checkpoint response, and we could see the content of this script that something is executing with several arguments. So, and it can be executed. It means that you can run different scripts with different content. It just depends on your desires and your purposes, on which system you want to respond and which actions you want to do. And one more thing I want to mention, that during this attack, we've used many different data sources. Windows logs, Windows internal logs, not our EDR telemetry. Linux logs, access logs, domain controller logs, they are Windows logs as well. Checkpoint logs, KSMG mail gateway logs. We could use LDAP integration to get some context about user accounts, about endpoints as well. And of course, our EDR telemetry. And one more thing is that this attacker was able to perform this attack on our endpoints just because our solution, our EDR solution, has been working in standalone mode. What it means? It means that it doesn't block anything. Yes, it doesn't block anything. It just creates a telemetry and detects some threats, but it does not interact with your infrastructure. And of course, all of these actions would be blocked if our full solution, our Kaspersky endpoint security EDR, has been installed on these endpoints, and attacker won't be able to create these reverse shells. Attacker won't be able to elevate his privileges, won't able to do memory dump or on LSS, etc. I suppose that's all. Thank you for your attention.